former MAGA influencer and an Elon Musk baby mama just seem to imply that Elon used satellites to interfere with and sway the 2024 presidential election. That is just blown up online, and obviously there are tons of questions and skepticism surrounding it, so let's kind of break everything down. So her name is Ashley St. Clair, and she used to be a major voice of the MAGA movement. She did work for Turning Point USA, and she got over 1 million Twitter followers posting about right-wing politics. Now, she says she's moved away from that. She considers herself ex-MAGA and has spent the last several months exposing the behind the scenes of the movement. We're posting videos discussing her relationship with Elon, the women of Mar-a-Lago, saying that there are paid agitators on the right coordinating what to post, and a lot more. And yesterday, she posted a Get Ready With Me video discussing the 2024 election, which happened at a time when she was close to Elon. And she says, in October,
Elon tells me that he is ready to release his, in his words, anomaly in the Matrix. And I am like, oh, like, who's that? And he says that he has 10,000 lasers in space, referring to his satellites. I say, because I am like rather uncomfortable and I know the gravity of what he's trying to tell me right now, I say, wow, finally a focus on the Jewish vote. He keeps going and he says, you know, this is not a piece that they'll see on the chessboard. And I straight up tell him, I say, I would ask more, but I really don't want to be deposed. To which he says, very wise.
It appears after this, Elon gets involved with America PAC and starts sending her real-time Delta vote metrics.
And I am just like, how the f do you have this sort of data? You don't get this from door knocking.
Now, she doesn't share any further details about the data, how it was acquired, anything like that, but she did know that she started to sort of have a crisis of faith, especially since she's always hated big tech.
So then to have arguably the most powerful man in the world who is sending me things about, you know, using his space technology in the election. This was something that I was internally wrestling with while publicly not really showing that I was having any of these internal ethical conflicts with myself regarding this information.
Then comes election night. She says she was at Mar-a-Lago, Elon leaves early, and
He told me over text, he's like, yeah, I knew hours ago that Trump won. My team has the best real-time data anywhere. First of all, how the fuck do you have real-time data on elections? I saw some shit and I'm fighting really hard to keep my voice because I saw shit that impacts everyone. Talking about this just sounds crazy. Like, I feel like I sound like a crazy person when I'm like, yeah, he told me about his space lasers and the election. Like, this is... what the f***?
But with all this, she notably kind of stops the allegation there. She never fully says the sentence, Elon rigged the election. She also never says that his satellites would have been used to interfere with votes, but the heavy implication to many in her video is that somehow he did, or in less direct words, that she's suggesting that Elon did something to sway the results in Trump's favor. Or with her saying things like,
I am increasingly concerned about our lack of regulations and investigations into how technology is being used to thwart democracy.
Ashley also claims that she has backups with many people with instructions in the event anything happens to her, right? Kind of implying that she could be in danger for revealing this. She also fears maybe being sued for defamation or other retaliation, that she was offered deals to stay quiet, and noting now that she's gone public that the people responsible could try to clean everything up before they get into any real trouble. But with all this, she said she opted to speak out because she just couldn't live with the burden of keeping this to herself anymore.
I've been a very scared and broken individual for basically my entire adult life. And having kids makes you ask the question, like, am I going to fight for something bigger? Like, what example am I going to be to my kids?
And as you'd expect, there have been a lot of different responses to all this. Obviously, left-leaning groups especially latched onto this claim, Occupy Democrats sharing it and saying there should be a full investigation. Others have also pointed to remarks that Trump and Elon have made in the past that they feel back up Ashley's points. Or like back in June when Elon was sparring with Trump and wrote, without me, Trump would have lost the election. Dems would control the House and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Well, obviously, that could refer to what he was doing on Twitter and the rallies and all the other strings that he was pulling. For a long time, people have kind of wondered if he meant something else there. Also, others have noted that throughout 2024, both before and after the election, Elon frequently referred to so-called anomalies in the matrix, which is a phrase that Ashley claimed that he used when discussing satellites in the election. And that includes one post that said, until about a month ago, early voting in 2024 favored the Dems even more than 2020. Leading Dems told me with extreme confidence that they would win Pennsylvania. They were certain. Then there were some anomalies in the matrix, and now Republican early votes vastly exceed 2020. Some have also shared this video of Elon on Tucker Carlson's election night stream where they feel that his son's revealing potential secrets that he overheard.
Should we help President Trump?
Yeah.
Well, you have.
Foreign space acts and quietly just do whatever we want. But never know.
As well as pointing to this clip of Trump talking about Elon.
And he knows those computers better than anybody, all those computers, those vote counting computers. And we ended up winning Pennsylvania like in a landslide, so it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So thank you to Elon.
Right, and at the time, all these clips, they made some people wonder and speculate a little, but of course it was very conspiratorial to talk about that, so it really, nothing ever really came of it. But now with Ashley St. Clair making these videos, you have people kind of circling back. But of course, with all this, like, I think it's important to remember, we are still in conspiratorial territory. Right now, the public does not have hard evidence here, and this is an enormous allegation, or at least implied allegation. So while some, they've said that she is very brave for speaking out, others saying we need an investigation. Others, of course, are incredibly skeptical of her claims, with some thinking that she's just making things up. Others sincerely questioning how satellites could even be used to interfere with voting, some just doubting her credibility for a number of reasons. For people noting she was a MAGA grifter before, but is now on the outs with them, so did she just decide to kind of switch teams and grift for the left? For people noting that because, these election claims aside, she's gotten a ton of attention for pivoting away from MAGA, getting profiled in tons of major outlets, doing interviews with left-leaning creators discussing how hard it is to leave MAGA.
If you're to leave, you're not just changing your vote or your political opinion, you're blowing up your entire life. My social circles, my friends, my income, all of the above.
Also, with all this, you had her previously telling the Washington Post that this is not lucrative for her, saying I have everything to lose and nothing to gain from speaking out about the most powerful people in the world. And so this whole situation, I'd really love to know your thoughts, or whether it be the allegations themselves, what it appears she's kind of heavily implied regarding the election, as well as, what are your opinions or trust levels in regards to kind of ex-MAGA influencers? And that actually may get connected to a debate that we've seen kind of raging around online of who is in the tent. Who are you open to forming coalitions with in regards to going against the Trump regime, or trying to stand up to that and vote that out? And then there's more we got to dive into in just a minute, but first let me thank a sponsor and say, we've been giving away $500 every week since early 2024 thanks to our sponsor, SeatGeek. So that's nearly $60,000 in free live entertainment, and if you still haven't entered, I don't know what to tell you. Spring's just around the corner and events are still ramping up. You still got basketball right now, baseball, tours for Bruno Mars, Ariana Grande, BTS, and a lot more. And entering, it takes like 2 seconds, and next week's $500 winner, it could be you. Because SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app with over 28 million downloads and tickets to over 70,000 events, sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it. And it's been so awesome seeing y'all win this money and use it to hit up your favorite concerts, games, Broadway shows, just y'all living your best lives. And if you're looking for tickets to literally anything, download the app or hit that link in the description and use code PHIL10 for 10% off your purchase on SeatGeek, whether you're a new customer or not. And then, and this is key, add that code to your SeatGeek account. That gets you 10% off of any ticket and enters you for your chance to win the weekly $500 giveaway, no purchase required. And SeatGeek vets, this applies for you too. Just add code PHIL10 to your account and you're entered. So hey, scan that QR code or click the link below and use code PHIL10 and make some memories. But then, diving right back into the news, experts are warning that Donald Trump's $1.8 billion anti-weaponization slush fund, it might be one of the most corrupt acts in American history. And that was also before Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche was unable to assure lawmakers that payments will not be made to child molesters, cop beaters, GOP campaign donors, and even Republican lawmakers.
The fact that I used to be President Trump's lawyer is just a fact, but I'm the Acting Attorney General. So don't say the President's former personal lawyer will do something. The Acting Attorney General will do something.
Mr. Attorney General, you are acting today like the President's personal attorney. And that's the whole problem. You've got you have a whole banner of his face hanging over the Department of Justice, and you and everybody else walks under it.
Right, because as I briefly touched on yesterday, in January, a year into his second term of the presidency, Trump sued his own Treasury Department for $10 billion. And he, along with his sons, alleged that the department failed to take necessary steps to prevent a former IRS employee from leaking their tax returns, even though that actually happened during his first term as president. And thanks to those leaks, along with reporting from outlets like the New York Times and ProPublica, we learned about how little Trump and other billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos paid in taxes compared to their overall wealth. With the guy who leaked Trump's tax records, along with those of thousands of others, still serving out a 5-year prison sentence. And then as far as Trump, he struck this deal with his own Department of Justice to drop the lawsuit along with 2 other cases that he had filed seeking hundreds of millions of dollars from the government, right? And so in exchange, you had the Trump DOJ announcing its plan to create this so-called anti-weaponization fund worth $1.776 billion, which of course is a nod to the year of the nation's founding. And the fund's purpose is to pay off people who have been victims of weaponization by past DOJs. But really, these so-called victims, they're expected to include prominent supporters of Donald Trump, former members of his staff, and thousands of people who stormed the Capitol as part of the violent mob seeking to overturn the results of the 2020 election, most of which were already pardoned by Trump in one of his first acts of his second term. And in fact, even before this announcement, several hundred Jan 6ers, they already filed claims seeking compensation. And actually, since Trump's return to the White House, the DOJ has already reportedly paid at least $8.5 million to settle legal claims brought by his allies who alleged that they were improperly targeted by federal law enforcement. And so in March, for example, it settled a lawsuit with Michael Flynn for more than $1 million after he sued the FBI for $50 million. And now you already have Mike Lindell, the MyPillow guy, telling CNN that he expects to be compensated via the fund, saying, "MyPillow is the most attacked company in history. My employees that own the company deserve to be made whole." And as far as, who's going to get this money, all of that's seemingly going to be handled with really no oversight and decided entirely outside of the normal processes for negotiating legal claims against the government. The judge who agreed to dismiss Trump's case noted that his motion to do so did not reference any settlement or include a stipulation of settlement. Or in other words, right, the terms of this agreement, they weren't filed as part of the case's public court record, so no one really knows exactly what they are. And even what the Trump administration is admitting publicly is far from reassured. They say that the fund will be controlled by a group of 5 people who just so happen to be selected by Blanche, who is Trump's former personal criminal defense lawyer. And actually, not only that, anyone that is appointed to this panel, they can be replaced by Trump at will. Also, any payments, they reportedly have to be made before December 2028, which is, of course, the end of Trump's term, and any remaining money has to be returned to the government. And while Trump and his family, they'll reportedly be barred from getting any of this money, the IRS has now also been barred from pursuing tax claims against Trump, his family, or his businesses, including those currently pending. And that's according to a 1-page document signed by Blanche and quietly posted on the DOJ's website today, right? Separate from the 9-page document posted yesterday that the department claimed explained the settlement. And altogether, this seems to be one of Trump's most brazen efforts to reward himself, his supporters, and his allies. So we have the head of the nonprofit Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington saying, "This is one of the single most corrupt acts in American history." And with that, the announcement of this fund is notably coincided with the resignation of a top government lawyer by the name of Brian Morrissey. Right? He's stepping down from his role as the Treasury Department's general counsel only 7 months after his confirmation in the Senate. Now, he hasn't publicly commented on his reasons for quitting, and in his resignation letter, he reportedly said that he had been grateful to work for Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. You also had a Treasury spokesperson saying in a statement that Morrissey had served the department with both honor and integrity, and adding, "We wish him all the best in his next endeavors." But still, despite all that, the timing of Morrissey's resignation, it does stand out. And that's because the Treasury Department is the one responsible for depositing the $1.776 billion into the anti-weaponization fund. Right? It first has to approve what's known as the Judgment Fund, which is an uncapped pot of money that's available for the federal government to pay settlement claims without needing congressional approval. And actually, with all this, in testimony before the Senate subcommittee today, you had Blanche claiming that he didn't know why Morrissey resigned. He also acknowledged that the so-called anti-weaponization fund is unusual, but claimed that it wasn't unprecedented. Or with the DOJ likening the fund to a $760 million fund that was set up during the Obama administration to deal with claims of discrimination made by Native American farmers and ranchers. Blanche also claimed that the settlements paid by the fund would not be limited to Trump supporters or based solely on actions of the Biden administration, and he pledged to make public quarterly reports detailing any settlements that are paid, saying the claims that are awarded and the amount will surely be made public along the way. Though notably, the agreement establishing the fund reportedly says that records will remain confidential, leaving it all up to the Trump-controlled panel overseeing the fund to decide what, if anything, to disclose about their processes for granting or denying claims. That said, though, Blanche openly admitted that Trump campaign donors wouldn't be excluded from seeking compensation. And he also suggested that Republican lawmakers whose telephone records were seized in 2023 by special counsel Jack Smith might receive money. And also, in some cases, he kept on insisting that he couldn't say for sure whether certain people would be disqualified since it'd be up to the panel. You know, the one whose members he gets to decide. And actually with that, besides what we showed earlier, he had this exchange with Senator Chris Van Hollen over the question of whether Jan 6 rioters could have claims paid.
This is an outrageous, unprecedented slush fund that you set up. Simple question, will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible for this fund?
Well, as it makes plain, anybody is
just let me know if they're eligible for the fund.
As was made plain yesterday, anybody in this country is eligible to apply if they believe they're a victim of weaponization.
Mr. Attorney General, let me ask you this. Are there going to be rules that say that if you've assaulted a Capitol Hill police officer or committed a violent crime, you will not be eligible? Why not make that a rule?
I expect that, because I'm not one of the commissioners setting up the rules, I expect
that there will be rules. You're appointing 4 of the 5 members, aren't you, Mr. Attorney General?
Pardon me?
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members.
I am appointing all 5 members.
Set up.
And Van Hollen, he also took it further, asking about a specific rioter who's since been convicted on multiple child sex abuse charges.
There's also an individual who, after being pardoned by the president, went on to molest 2 children. And that person actually tried to buy the silence of these children by saying that he would pay them some of the funds that he was hoping to get from your slush fund. Can you commit to making the rules so that that person is not eligible for a payout under this fund?
Well, you're obviously lying in your question because there's no way that this person committed to that. But the slush fund, as you call it, which is not, didn't exist.
I'm sure,
but I can commit.
Mr. Attorney General, don't ever do that again. I am reporting
Do what again?
what he said. He said on the expectation that he hoped to get some of the funds from a payout. He's been
From
hearing
you said from the slush fund, Senator, and that didn't exist when he said that.
And Blanche is technically correct there, because while this guy did reportedly try to bribe one of his victims with money that he claimed he'd receive as part of the restitution for January 6 defendants, this did happen several months ago. So yes, it seems unlikely that this creep was specifically referring to money from a fund that didn't exist yet. But also, like seriously, Todd? So I guess also his reaction shouldn't be all that surprising considering his handling of the Epstein files, which of course is an issue that also came up repeatedly today. With Van Hollen, for example, Blanche claimed that he had met with survivors and their lawyers, but several had reportedly denied that. And then he had this interaction with Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon.
I want to go on to the Epstein investigation. Is it closed or open?
When you say the Epstein investigation, what are you referring to, Senator?
Well, the FBI said in last year in July that it had closed the Epstein investigation. So I'm just using their words. Is it open or closed?
I don't believe the FBI said that.
Well,
I mean, if you're referring
you're head of the Department of Justice. Is the Epstein investigation open or closed?
But I guess I don't understand what Epstein investigation means. The investigation
Well, let me put
into
it
Jeffrey
differently.
Epstein himself, yes, he's dead. Any investigation into potential other bad guys will always be open if we have evidence that supports in any way, shape, or form that we can make a case.
But of course, there are many who feel like there's already enough evidence to continue investigating. And ultimately, all of this is sort of connected, at least in terms of what it says about the current Department of Justice, which is actually something you had Rhode Island Senator Jack Reed hitting on with his time on the clock.
You know, this whole hearing, I think, is exposing something, which is, to me, very frightening. You're a very gifted lawyer. But from my perspective, you have very little faith to the Constitution and the people of America, and you're the president's consigliere.
Your perspective is completely wrong, Senator,
Well,
respectfully.
I think the facts will prove me right.
But also, while you have Trump and Blanche seemingly manipulating the levers of government to enrich friends and supporters, we then have to talk about how Google and Blackstone are seemingly gunning for control of the puppet strings behind the AI industry. Though also, it might not work as well as they're hoping. So they just announced plans to create an artificial intelligence cloud company that'll compete with the likes of Nvidia for control of the infrastructure behind AI. And Google, they're reportedly providing the hardware with their new specialized chips, and Blackstone, they're providing the initial $5 billion in equity capital, making them the majority owner. And according to the announcement, the plans to have 500 megawatts worth of computing capacity by 2027, which I guess just for scale, it's about the same electric power required to serve a mid-sized city. And that's apparently just the beginning, with the announcement promising to substantially increase capacity over time. And so this deal, it is Google tossing down the gauntlet at Nvidia over the chips required to make AI function. Because even as demand for the computing power necessary to train and run advanced AI models has exploded, most major companies, they're just relying on computing infrastructure from CoreWeave, which uses Nvidia's chips. But this new, unnamed company, they're going to use Google's specialized chips known as tensor processing units, or TPUs, in their data centers. And that part, on top of the initial capital, is where Blackstone comes in, right? Because Blackstone's billed itself as the largest global provider of data centers. In fact, they've been buying up data center operators for years. And you had their chairman and chief executive, Steven Schwartzman, saying in a recent earnings call that the firm has more than $150 billion in data center assets, including sites under construction. And then, actually, there's also another $160 billion in potential new projects. But the real question is whether these new companies' data centers, or any of Blackstone's data center project under construction or in the planning phases, are they ever going to actually get up and running? Because despite the big headlines, many of the data centers planned for 2026, they've either been delayed or outright canceled. In fact, according to Data Center Watch, more than $64 billion worth of data center projects have been blocked or delayed by a growing wave of local bipartisan opposition. Because if you haven't seen, data centers have become a major flashpoint both nationally and on the local level. There are at least 142 activist groups across 24 states organizing to block data center construction and expansion. And some of the most common concerns you see are about higher utility bills, water consumption, noise, impact on property value, and green space preservation. In fact, according to a recent Gallup poll, 71% of Americans oppose data centers being built in their areas at all. Not to mention the fact that the US power grid really isn't equipped to handle the type of power that the data centers demand. Peak electricity supply in the United States is on track to fall short by 2028, with that gap only growing in the years after. And at least for right now, Elon Musk's solution of orbital data centers, it's a little closer to sci-fi than reality. But then also, on top of all that, there's the fact that AI itself has a kind of a PR problem, right? It's really not a secret that AI is very unpopular in certain circles online and in real life. In fact, another poll found that 80% of Americans are either very concerned or somewhat concerned about AI, and 55% think that AI will do more harm than good in everyday life. And it seems, at least at this point, that the unpopularity is just snowballing and it's happening fast. Some researchers say that they've never seen backlash intensify this quickly. One consulting firm CEO predicted that there would be large-scale protests against major AI companies like OpenAI and Anthropic within a few months. So all of that, as you have executives within the industry saying that AI is just misunderstood. Right? Chris Lahane, for example, OpenAI's chief global affairs officer, said that, quote, doomers who are only talking about the absolute worst case scenarios are fueling the flames of resentment against AI, saying if you're going to constantly and consistently talk about AI from a fear perspective, you are going to drive fear. And adding, we as an industry need to be a lot more calibrated in making the case as to why this is good for the country and good for the world. So that is, there are other executives within the industry taking a, let's say, less diplomatic approach, saying that those pushing back against AI are, quote, cave people who oppose all development. But, with all that, I would love to know your take on the situation, whether it be about AI at large, data centers specifically, or really anything that we've talked about. And then there's more we're going to dive into in just a minute, but first let me thank a sponsor and say, there is a good chance that if your dog could read the ingredients label on some dog foods, they'd probably pack a tiny suitcase and file for emancipation. Because a lot of what gets marketed as nutrition is really just brown mystery crunch with a confidence problem. And that's why today's sponsor, Sundays for Dogs, exists. It's real food for dogs made with human-grade ingredients, real meat, organs, and superfoods. Not meatish dust, not factory leftovers cosplaying as dinner. Sundays was created by a veterinarian who wanted dog food that was actually healthy, easy to serve, and not wildly inconvenient. It's air-dried, jerky style, so you get real nutrition and flavor without the fridge, freezer, chopping, cooking, or becoming your dog's private chef. You just scoop it, serve it, and suddenly your dog looks at you like you finally got promoted from roommate to provider. And it can support better digestion, shinier coats, fresher breath, and, excited zoomies around your furniture. Plus, no sketchy byproducts, synthetic preservatives, or ingredients that sound invented in a lab by someone mad at dogs. Even picky eaters love it because it actually smells and tastes like food. So hey, scan that QR code or go to sundaysfordogs.com/Phil for 50% off your first order. That's half off to finally upgrade your dog's bowl to something worthy. But then, diving back into the news, some more news you need to know. A group of teens just had a full-out brawl in a DC Chipotle. We're talking punching and chairs thrown, little kids running for cover. It was bad. And when we're not sure about the specifics of any arrests here, overall, there's been a rise in teen takeovers in cities like DC, Detroit, Atlanta, and Chicago. Where teens, they organize on social media to flood public spaces, sometimes just for the sake of gathering, and other times just to cause trouble. And to be clear, there does appear to be a risk here. Some of these takeovers, they've ended in gunfire. And as things have gotten more dangerous, you have people like U.S. Attorney for DC, Pirro, saying that she's about to start charging parents of the kids involved. Talking about everything from fines to 6 months behind bars, saying that it will send a clear message to the parents that you must supervise your kids or face criminal consequences. So there, you've seen some people pushing back, saying that these issues should be handled on a local level. Though also with that, you have people noting that the neighborhood that all this happened in already has a curfew for teens. And actually, they saw another takeover just a few days after that. But still, you had one official in the neighborhood where the Chipotle brawl happened arguing policing and putting people in jail is actually kind of how we got to where we're at now. Saying there's no one at home because they got locked up and thrown in jail. Saying we're not going to police our way out of the situation. But really, you should expect to see more of this in the news. Officials are already expecting to see a rise in takeovers this summer, and so, I guess at the very least, we'll see how effective this plan is in the next few weeks. Then, in other news, a much more troubling story. 5 people are dead, including 1 security guard and 2 other men who were shot at San Diego's largest mosque. And those other 2 were the teenage gunmen who then took their own lives. And the timing here, it stands out, and many say is intentional because it happened on the first day of one of the holiest times in Islamic tradition. Right, and yesterday morning, you had police getting a call from a mom about her runaway son, saying that she believed that he was suicidal and that several of her weapons were missing along with her car. But they're saying that her son was with a companion and that they were dressed in camo. And as you had police searching for that car, hoping to find her son in it, they started receiving calls about an active shooter at the Islamic Center of San Diego. And from there, the chaos spread as they pulled up to the mosque and started clearing the building. More calls came in, reporting gunshots just a few blocks away, where reporters say that a landscaper was shot at but wasn't actually wounded. And then they were called to a third location in the area where they found the teenage suspects dead, with the teen whose mom originally called the police, also leaving a note behind, though there the details haven't been revealed to the public yet. And at least for now, you have investigators considering this a hate crime until proven otherwise, with Police Chief Scott Wall saying there was definitely hate rhetoric that was involved. Reports are saying that the words hate speech were written on one of the guns that they found with the suspects. And as for the response to all this, you had Wall saying that this was every community's worst nightmare. And you had the Council on American Islamic Relations saying no one should ever fear for their safety while attending prayers or studying at an elementary school, encouraging everyone to keep the community in prayer. But then we get to our final story today, and that is Trump just announced that he added another 600 prescriptions to the TrumpRx site, nearly 7 times more than before.
By incorporating this massive catalog of low-cost generics at TrumpRx.gov, consumers will now have one source to ensure that they're getting the lowest possible cost on their prescriptions. And in some cases, the discounted generics available through TrumpRx may be offered at an even lower cash price than the out-of-pocket insurance costs.
Trump also claimed that they're adding features to connect patients with the most affordable pharmacies in their area and options to get prescriptions mailed straight to their doors. And according to Joe Gebbia, Trump's chief design officer and actually one of the co-founders of Airbnb, you'll be able to compare generic and brand name medication costs similarly to how you'd compare listing prices on Airbnb. But then also, just like Airbnb has been criticized for now outpricing regular hotels, you have experts like Sean Sullivan, a professor of health economics and policy at the University of Washington, say consumers can probably get a cheaper version of these medicines through insurance and their pharmacies or via cash pay services like Cost Plus Drugs instead of using TrumpRx. So for example, if you have Medicaid, unless you're using TrumpRx for something like weight loss drugs that aren't covered, the site isn't much help. And notably, this is an area that everyone's kind of not happy with. Right, polls show that only 16% of Americans were satisfied with their healthcare costs by the end of last year, which is a record low. And as far as TrumpRx, since it launched in February, you have experts asking questions about the limited number of medications on the site, saying that it only helped a small group of patients. And now, even though this adds hundreds of more medications to the roster, some are saying that they still aren't offering a real solution if you can just get what you need from other places for less, which is why you have some experts saying that this is really more about optics and PR, and why there's this growing question of whether TrumpRx actually fills in gaps or it just overlaps with cheaper options that people already have access to. But that, my friends, you beautiful bastards, brings us to the end of your Tuesday Philip DeFranco Show dive into the news. Thank you for watching. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.